hospital, if I have a 19-year-old boy who meets with an accident, he keeps his parents away. Parents are in some other place, in the passage and corridor. उसके कॉलेज के सारे दोस्त आ जाते हैं. So youth gels with youth, and youth bonds with youth. And somehow at that particular age, I think we don't like what adults say, especially your parents. Till the time you become parents, and then you realize how badly your kid is treating. So I think that is the message which we should learn from our experience. My father's no more, and I never wished Happy Father's Day to him. Now when my son doesn't wish me, I feel hurt. So the idea is, did I act in the right time when I was a youth? So don't waste your years right now. You are going to grow old and feel terribly screwed up. And then you would not, and you will regret all the actions you took.
So that brings me to my first question to you. As we see, the nature of sports is quite changing, and everyone in general is more aware about their fitness. We see Virat Kohli training a lot, taking care of his fitness. We have actors from the Bollywood industry also looking after their health. So, as an orthopedic surgeon, do you somewhere see that the nature of injuries has become more serious, or is there a change in that because, say, of overtraining, or like we discussed when having a talk sometime back, overuse of muscle? So, in that manner, how should the youth be careful while looking after their fitness?
So I'll tell you something which Google and ChatGPT will not tell you. So I'll tell you what is happening in Kandiv, because I'm facing here. So छोटा what do you play cricket on? Turf. So the turfs have become a very common cause of injury, because you're playing very high velocity, high energy, and high emotion sport in a very small area. So you are trying to change the nature of a game which was meant to be played on a very, very large ground with certain amount of time, space given to it. You are now converting that sport to a small ground in a small time. So that is increasing the nature of the injury. So, and it's a huge volume that I get. Turf running the injury. So people are playing lot of sports without being fit. So nobody is warming up, nobody is storing up, nobody is. तो सर मैं क्या करता हूँ, हर सैटरडे संडे मेरे को क्रिकेट खेलना है और मैं 4 घंटे, उसकी वाइफ बोलती है सर इसको बोलो मत. मतलब द आइडिया इज यू आर नॉट फिट. The other days you are hogging on pav bhaji, you are eating all kinds of carbs. Kandivali is the principal consumer of carbs. Why? Because we have fantastic diet by eating milk, paneer, mangoes, cheese. Our diet is not, and people who eat egg whites are dickheads. They should not be having this. People who eat boiled chicken are bad people. So the idea is that that is a healthier diet. So we are not fit, and we are playing a lot of sports. What I am trying to say is, understand your fitness, play a sport at that speed inside a rink and not get injured. The idea is you are playing very, very high velocity sports in grounds which were not supposed to be indulging that. So recognize all these patterns and then try to adapt. Warm up is the single most important thing. We are not doing adequate warm up. I get lot of national level badminton players, young boys who are shifting to Hyderabad, Bangalore. There are a lot of coaching institutions there, and the only thing which I can pick up from their problems is that they are not warming up. Especially youth does not like to warm up. They feel they are always warm.
Thank you, sir. I think we all need to keep that in mind when we get on field the next time. My next question is to Dilip sir. So recently we have come out of a very terrible pandemic, and during that we saw that there is a lot of not awareness. I would now use the word awareness with caution, but people are reading a lot more about wellness, yoga, and we see a lot of that trend happening even in the pandemic. So what are your views of how you see the entire landscape change?
I think in the pandemic, people got more aware towards their health, and there were a lot of online platforms were there, or they're watching YouTube, and a lot of Instagram and social media platform where they get. But I feel that there are a lot of misconception also about yoga. Somewhere it is diluted also because of this came. So people came with different styles of yoga, and some were right or some were not because they were performing online, offline. It's like I'm learning to, ride bicycle online. So it's really very difficult. So I believe that when there's a lot of information, with that there's some misconception also comes, and people start following them blindly. If we do this and that. But what I believe that we all are natural yogis, as Swami Vivekananda says. We have like every soul is potentially divine. Like people generally say, especially youngsters, that they cannot focus, they cannot concentrate. So there are a lot of small practices are there. You will find on YouTube and very lot of social media platforms. But I believe like when the situation comes, automatically your concentration level goes to the peak. Like in examination hall, you all will be for 3 hours. You will not think of anything else. You will not think कि गर्मी है या relationship issues or peer issues or घर and all. For 3 hours, you will be focusing either in your paper or someone else. But focus is on. And we all say that we cannot study for, we make a timetable, 30 days, 1 day a chapter, 30 chapters, then 15 days, 2 chapters a day. Then we go to the last day where we ask a friend, सबसे high weightage कौन सा है? And then that night we become a natural yogis. Whole night we are awake and we are studying for like complete 10 hours, 12 hours. We don't give rest at all to the brain and we directly come for the exam. So I think because a lot of information, why I'm saying this because I follow traditional yoga, that people are using it in a different way. They think yoga means only Ashtanga yoga, only Surya Namaskar. They don't even know what actually Ashtanga yoga is. Then they perform Surya Namaskar, then the power yoga, hot yoga, aerial yoga, beer yoga. You can have beer and do yoga, dog yoga, baby yoga. So sometimes a lot of information is good also and bad also. So I think that was the thing. And as sir said, even in yoga, people got a lot of injuries, and then they come to us.
So any patient of backache will come and I tell them that देखो boss, all backaches can be solved by this. डॉक्टर मैं रोज योगा कर रहा हूँ मैं पूछता हूँ आप ऑनलाइन कर रहे हो ऑफलाइन कर रहे हो आप ग्रुप में कर रहे हो या इंडिविजुअल कर रहे हो सो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड वेदर योर प्रॉब्लम इज जेनेरिक or a specific problem. So when you have a specific problem, it requires a specific solution. When you have a generic problem, you can do generic solutions. And like what boss said, we should stop using yoga as suffix and prefix. And we should just use yoga in itself. The way he said it was just as a suffix everywhere. Here yoga was very interesting.
So as we are talking about this online offline thing, we have seen a lot of technological infusion happening when it comes to fitness, be it smartwatches, Fitbit tracking our health every second. So when we talk about technological infusion, what according to you are the pros and cons? Of course, there are pros because people who don't have access to teachers get access to good yoga teachers online. But obviously, there are certain cons, like you said. So, how do you see technological infusion when we talk about taking the practice of yoga ahead?
Actually, pandemic helped me a lot to reach many places at Industry 4.0. I can reach globally now. Like I don't have to travel, but online I can give. Theoretical part is okay, but practically I believe there should be a sessions first practically, and then after doing a practice over a period of time, then you can go for online because then you understand how to perform in particular practice, the do's, don'ts, and features. वो सबको पता होता है. But when we directly start online, here you are seeing only one angle. He is showing this is how you have to hold your leg, and you're doing something else only result into knee problem. And there is one injury which is known as a yoga injury only, the Ashtanga shoulder, because they use their shoulders a lot, especially in Ashtanga, and they get this injury, shoulder dislocated, or there's some problem in their tendonitis, rotator cuff. So I think that's a sad for yogis to have a injury named as on the yoga name like Ashtanga. So I believe online and offline theoretical part is okay, but there should be a proper training, and that cannot be done fully online because certain things you require a side view, somewhere you require a top view. That is not possible online, and you cannot understand that easily because this is something. If there is an error in the program, syntax error or something, it's okay. Here you are playing with a life. if there is some error that can result into injury, if people performing advanced asanas has even got a paralysis attacks, and even got a, like suppose, brain hemorrhage, because suddenly they drop their head on the ground. So I believe that there are some pros that you can reach to many people, you can hear many people through online, but at the same time while practicing, you need to be very careful that you need to go for the offline teaching first, and then when you understand it, you can go for online.
I think, yeah, we need to break the trend of, oh, I'm going to online yoga class very soon. So when we talk about technological infusion in the orthopedic section, is there any major technological infusion that you've come across in your practice over the years?
Over the years, yes, and more even now. So over the years, what's happening is, as anybody in this hall, if their family member has undergone a fracture, they'll know that we implant, we put a plate, screw, rod, system, right? So they have changed a lot. Specific, it is becoming gender specific. So, for example, if a female will fracture this bone at this place, there will be a specific hardware available for that bone, that place, that female, that body mass index. So, more and more customization. And now the advent of robot. So I think in few years, once the robots become cheaper, they will just percolate everywhere. Andivali has huge influx of robot in orthopedics. So robots is now dominant force in joint replacement. So what does robot do? Robot gives you a precision to the last millimeter. At least as of now, we feel that, right? Till something bigger comes, right? Because we felt we were anyway precise before this. So the robot gives you a hack, and maybe tomorrow, if your grandmom undergoes a joint replacement, you may want to take the help of a robot.
Difference, if we say, between wellness and medical tourism currently?
So wellness would be who come to him. It is more of preventive illness, to prevent yourself from becoming unwell. And when you are going to another country to take a treatment, it is for something which you have been suffering for a very long length of time. So let us say you decide that I require joint replacement, I live in Yemen and I don't have anybody. Now I go to another country. So what is my budget? Let's say my budget is 1 lakh rupees. So which countries do the joint replacement in 7 lakhs? So India will be shortlisted in that. Now in India, where do I go? Which city do I go? How do I travel? Who makes it easiest for me? And who does not overshoot my budget and does not torture me? So the idea is medical tourism is for big illnesses, big surgeries to be done in big setups, okay, because they are coming from abroad in a suburb, so they should be done in a tertiary referral set units only. And I feel the most important thing is end-to-end service to that particular patient. If medical tourism has to receive a boost, अपन कैसे यहाँ से वियतनाम जाएंगे तो गाड़ी भी भेजता है, फिर एयरपोर्ट पे कोई रिसीव करता है, फिर वहाँ पे अपने साथ महाराज भी चलता है, फिर अपने को अपन वियतनाम में बोट में बैठ के बटाटा पोहा मतलब अपना ट्रिप सक्सेसफुल। स्विट्जरलैंड में ऊपर जाकर डॉक्टर शू वड़ा पाव હતો શું બોલું તમને एकदम સારું मतलब अभी स्विट्जरलैंड में जाके अपन वड़ा पाव पहाड़ी पे खा रहे हैं इसलिए अपने को मजा है। तो मेडिकल टूरिज्म भी वैसे ही होना चाहिए। अरे डॉक्टर आई वेंट देयर, क्या मस्त मेरा जॉइंट रिप्लेसमेंट हुआ, मेरे को बॉम्बे दर्शन भी हो गया, मैंने सब कुछ देख लिया, एकदम बगैर फीवर आया, मेरा टाका भी निकल गया, देखो मेरी माँ क्या मस्त है। सो दैट इज द आइडियल मेडिकल टूरिज्म। पर उल्टा क्या हो जाता है, देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ डाउट्स इन बिटवीन, हु विल गिव अ बैड नेम, होती होती। सो रिकॉग्नाइजिंग व्हाट इज द नीड ऑफ द क्लाइंट, having qualified people to take care end to end, and then making sure that they receive exactly what they bargained for. मतलब एकदम to the last and little more. That is what will promote medical tourism. And medical health industry, so we are God's absolute. मतलब meditation, yoga, so there is no denial.
So as well, still if you go to their place, they will say, no, we will cure you for sure. कि आप इधर आ जाओ, we'll cure you, we'll do Ayurveda, acupressure and all. So they are just fooling you because they just want to make money. And all these wellness resorts are very, very expensive, over expensive. Sometimes expensive than a surgery. Okay, so there is a myth that everything can be cured by yoga. For certain things, like people have a back pain, as I said, they're doing yoga for a long time and still they are performing particular asana pranayam without doing an MRI and all. So there we need a therapeutic approach. So we also consult doctor, even we have doctors in our institute also. They go through the reports and they suggest you accordingly. Yes, yoga is a curative and preventive therapy, but depends upon the intensity and how the disease is. If you have certain things, you require a surgery, and then you can to fight symptoms.
So I once did a bilateral knee replacement in a yoga teacher, and we didn't declare that we have done it because he his business runs कि मैं आपका joint replacement रुकवाऊंगा, आपको joint replacement की जरूरत नहीं, आप योगा कर देते, अब उनका खुद का joint replacement हो गया है, कैसे चलेगा? So the idea is what he says, there is an upper limit to everything, including our science also. So we also reach a plateau. तो मुझे भी बोलना पड़ता है भाई साहब दवाई बहुत हो गया, अब आप थोड़ा योगा करें. So ऐसा you have to, it's a mix of like, it's a holistic approach, right?
So we also, when we hear about a lot of treatments, both in wellness as well as when it comes to medicine, Ayurveda is now also something that people are talking about. So, in your experience, have you, used Ayurveda in orthopedic, like the ointments and things that we usually ask prescribed to if we have a muscle strain? So,
So one is Ayurveda is not being discussed nowadays. Ayurveda has always been, it is always been, it's the prelude to all other health sciences. So that cannot be denied. Uh, how I tell my patients is, it's easier to get an orthopedic surgeon than to get a good Ayurveda expert. Because orthopedic surgery is relatively easier to learn, it's more scientific, it's more evidence based, it seems to corroborate with your thought processes, and there are fixed parameters. Whereas to be a very good Vedacharya requires you to be very intuitive, very knowledgeable, and there will be fewer teachers who are willing to disseminate their knowledge. So, somebody will, rheumatoid arthritis will tell me कि हम, वलसाड़ के पास एक फार्म हाउस है, वहाँ जा रहे हैं, वहाँ योगा, मतलब वहाँ पे हम लोग वेदाचार्य है, वो करेंगे. तो I always tell them that थोड़ा सा स्टीरॉयड वो भी देंगे, थोड़ा सा स्टीरॉयड मैं भी दूंगा, मैं बोल के दूंगा और बगैर बोल के दूंगा. बीमारी तो वैसे ही जाने वाली है, आगे आपकी इच्छा. So the idea is good skilled Vedacharyas are not very common. अभी आपको क्रॉनिक गैस्ट्राइटिस एसिडिटी हो रही है, एडवर्टीजमेंट आया जा रहा है, उस गोली में क्या है वो किसी को पता नहीं है. एटलीस्ट मैं जो दे रहा हूँ उसके बारे में सबको ज्ञान है, उसका साइड इफेक्ट इट्स ऑल ओवर. सो दैट इज द ओनली थिंग. वेरी गुड आयुर्वेदा इज द वे टू गो फॉरवर्ड इन ऑर्थोपेडिक्स तो फॉर श्योर, बट फ्रॉम अ गुड, एंड वो कैसे पता चलेगा, दैट इज द डिफिकल्ट.
So, when we talk about wellness and availing medical treatment, be it in the wellness sector or the medical sector, we often talk about it being extremely expensive, like we just said. So, the being provided.
So in India, as I said, you can fill your stomach with vada pav also, and there are expensive thalis also. Same way where it's yoga or medical, you have all types. According to your budget, you can choose. But there are very few, as I said, the wellness one, there are very few which are very real, which are using the traditional approach. Because even this is mentioned in Y20 also, that we need to focus more on the indigenous sports or traditional sports of India, such as Kusti and all. So talking about this, I think it's very important that you should know your problem and accordingly take a reviews with others and then take the treatment. Yes, it is very expensive nowadays, but actually if you see the treatment which they use is not so expensive if you go through it. But the rates are very high because they have made like a resort. But if you go to a smaller yoga institutions, which they charge very less, but then people feel if it is less expensive, means it not be good. It's not a good quality. So we have that mental psychological barrier. If something is expensive, which is very good, I think same happens in the generic medicines are also. Yeah, there are some medicines which are branded which doctor writes. You will find that 500, 600 rupees. And the generic form of the medicine may be around 10 rupees or something. But just because it is generic medicine is very less expensive, we will go for towards the expensive thing.
That's the yoga.
I think there has been a tremendous difference with that scheme. Okay, one is in orthopedics only. I'll tell you, orthopedics and cardiology, even cancer care. So joint replacements have become free in government hospitals, which is a very big deal. So you can walk into any government hospital, at least I know Maharashtra and Gujarat, and you can get totally replacement free of cost because of the scheme. When I was in training, that time ऐसा नहीं होता था. Means some amount of money the patient's relative has to cough up, like towards consumable or towards the cost of the joint. उसके लिए वो 15-20 हजार 22 हजार रुपए भी ज़्यादा हो जाता. So now you with zero money you can get a joint replacement, which is a huge deal, and you can get good quality joints because Sri Narendra Modi brought the cost of the total knees, the prosthesis, to abysmally low rates, and it virtually made it half. Same thing has happened in cardiac stents. So for angioplasties, it's very good. You may not get a medicated stent, but you will survive that crisis. Okay, your totally replacement may not last you 32 years because it has not done by the boss himself. But it will next 8-10 years के लिए तो आपका crisis निकल जाएगा. To what he said, थोड़ा quality suboptimal होगा naturally, but it has helped. In children's orthopedics, I can tell you from my experience, the ASHA workers who are a part of that scheme, they are just like how you guys are charged up, that's how they are charged up. My God, and they are so energetic. And you teach them कि boss ये एक deformed foot ये पकड़ के लेकर आते हैं, that देखो अभी ये पैदा हुआ है, चलो इसका ट्रीटमेंट चालू करो. So we are, like for example, I go to Parga every 15 days and I associate myself with all these ASHA workers, and we are providing free children's orthopedic services. I am telling you, when I started 2.5 years back, the children who were coming were 14, 15, 16, 11, 12, neglected. Now they become so smart, वो पैदा होते ही उठा के लेकर आते हैं. सर देखो ये टेढ़ा पैर वाला अभी वो 11 साल का होगा, उससे पहले आप. So we have actually made a shift. So those schemes are very useful. They may not apply to the rich, but to the poor, yes. And I think more and more such schemes must come because we have a vast, huge underprivileged sector. और बहुत ज़्यादा बेचारे हो. They really require healthcare facility. जितना भी दो उतना कम.
Thank you for sharing. I think this really see the ground level impact, and we as youth need to start reading more about these things and becoming more aware. So coming to my concluding question for both of you, what would your takeaways for us be from this session as youth? As we go ahead in our lives, be it from the wellness perspective, awareness perspective about it, or the medical perspective about it.
I always suggest one thing to the students, which you may have heard from teachers also, that whatever you study,
at least 1 hour we should, every day 1 hour we should study or practice. I never suggest that. Okay. So what I suggest that, what my teacher suggested to me, that first you learn to sit at one place, without mobile phone. Mobile phone is the biggest source of meditation right now. So you can start with like 10 minutes, because now we are so restless, amount of information we are getting through social media. When we don't get anything new, we become anxious. And we all the time, we want some new information. So you're making your mind and brain active and work 24 hours. So your mind never gets rest. All the time you're working. Even the dreams you are sleeping. But मन नहीं लग रहा है, दिमाग खराब हो रहा है, दिमाग का दही हो. Generally we do for our mind, nothing. We never give any training. Either we'll go for walk or listen to music. But there's need to take a pause. Like how you work for some time. I said one thing at Swami Vivekananda said, we all are natural yogis. If you're working for like 1 hour, 2 hours, what you'll do is just do and stretch. That's natural. You're not performing any asana. I'm not saying about yogic perspective. You will say, who will do for 1 hour? Same way for the mind, there's need for meditation. Because your mind gets rest when you are sleeping or exercising or doing a meditation. So that's very important to, because if you are, keep your mind healthy, if you are stressed, tense and all, you cannot be more productive, creative or innovative. You will be more productive, creative when your mind is calm and composed. So that you can take it from meditation. I will not say from a yogic perspective that you will become a sadhu or sant. But what happens at this stage when we don't know what potentialities we have? Sometimes to know what is our aim, like we are discussing about the future, we say that we all have some unique abilities and capabilities. But when I look at myself, that's so rare. So there is need to do an introspection. I need to focus on myself, and we are focusing on others all the time. So to know yourself or to bring change, because if you have a thinking, if you have a feeling, if you have emotions, the way you educate other things, we need to educate these things also. And that can be educated through yoga, which you may find initially as a boring part, which I also find, because I'm also an engineer. Okay, I got bored there, then I came here. Because I also got a back issues. Okay, this is how I started. But that was not because of yoga. I was not doing it all. That was because of sports. As I said, when I was not doing the warm-up and all, used to play cricket. This is how I came, did surgery also, then yoga. So then that, what we need to do as a youth is to try to meditate, sleep, exercise, and do involve, as I said, sit in silence. Don't think of any kind of meditation. If you go to Google or you go to YouTube or Instagram, they will suggest you many things. Do this, focus on that. Then you are completely clueless. You don't even know what you are doing. So I just don't try anything. Just try to do nothing. And that's very difficult. But if you get a mastery on it, then you can do something peacefully.
ऐसा है बच्चा एकदम स्टेयर कर रहा है डूइंग नथिंग तो भी माँ बाप को अच्छा नहीं लगता, बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है। और बच्चा बोलेगा मैं तो ध्यान में हूँ बैठा हूँ। सो देखो, कोई भी गोल आपको हासिल करना है ना, उसके दो पहलू है, एक है जरूरत और एक है सहूलियत। इट इज कॉल्ड नीड एंड इट इज ईज। एक आईआईटी में बच्चा एक गोल बनाता है, कितनी आग लगी है उसमें उसको आईआईटी में जाने के लिए या जीतने के लिए किसी पॉलिटिकल रैली में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए, वो आग कितनी है। इट शुड बी कितना, इट शुड बी लाइक 7, 8, 9 on 10। उससे नीचे का फिगर आया ना तो आप समझो कुछ नहीं होना है। और दूसरी चीज है सहूलियत, ईज। मतलब अगर आपकी सहूलियत ही 0 है तो एनीथिंग मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 0 इज। तो आप में 10 की आग लगी है लेकिन आपको कोई ईज ही नहीं है, आप उस शहर में ही नहीं हो जहाँ इस तरीके की चीजें होती हैं, आप उस कॉलेज में ही नहीं हो, आप उस क्लास में ही नहीं हो जहाँ ऐसी चीजें होती हैं, तो फिर तो कुछ नहीं होगा। तो द मैजिक फिगर इज 7 into 7, 49। मतलब एक 7 into 8 का आपके पास सपोर्ट सिस्टम रहना चाहिए। 7 on 10, 8 on 10, नीड एंड ईज। यही मेरा मैसेज है। आपके लाइफ का जो भी गोल है, अगर वो हासिल नहीं हो रहा ना, तो आपकी नीड में प्रॉब्लम है या ईज में प्रॉब्लम। और ये यूथ का ही प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ये सबका ही प्रॉब्लम। जब अंदर, मतलब राहुल गांधी के अंदर उतनी आग नहीं होगी तभी वो नहीं जीत पा रहे, उतनी जरूरत उनको अनुभव नहीं हो रहा होगा, या फिर उनके अंदर 9/10 की आग होगी बट सहूलियत 0 ही है। मतलब उनको जो सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं वो उनको इतना 0 में सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं कि बेचारे जो भी करते हैं उसका सम टोटल 0 है। तो इसी तरीके से मेक आपको 50% मार्क्स मिलते रहे कोई भी चीज में, कोई भी चीज में। आप बड़े हो जाएंगे, आप यानी आपको जो देखने आ रहा है आप उसको बोल रहे हो कि मेरे को इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, बट इंटरेस्ट है, या फिर आपको नीड नहीं है। आप कुछ भी देख लो, कुछ भी, आप लॉयर बन गए, आपकी प्रैक्टिस नहीं चल रही, नीड और ईज का ही लोचा है। तो जस्ट गेट योर नीड एंड ईज करेक्ट। आपकी जरूरत कितनी है और आपकी सहूलियत कितनी है। अगर आपको जिस दिन लग गया ना बॉस मैं तो राइट हूँ, मेरे को तो 9 on 10 की आग लगी है, मेक इट इजी फॉर योरसेल्फ, फाइंड अ मेंटर। जिस दिन आपको सही मेंटर मिल जाएगा, यू विल बी देयर।
So what sir said is right, but if you see the Hindi word of meditation, you know what it is? तो बस ध्यान दो। So whatever you do, ध्यान दो means make yourself one pointed. Meditation is not only sit one place, but whatever you do, you can say I'm doing meditation. If you are one pointed, you are doing meditation. Whatever work you do.
So the definition of meditation is to bring your focus from various things to that one. The more often you are distracted and you are able to bring yourself back to it, you are higher in meditation. So a distracted yogi is the best yogi. वो डिस्ट्रैक्टेड है लेकिन बार बार वो वहाँ पे आ पा रहा है, केंद्रित हो पा रहा है। जितनी बार आप उसको केंद्रित करें, 11 minutes of such practice for 11 months has increased the size of your prefrontal cortex of brain by 11%. The rule of 11 in productivity and motivation. 11 minutes of meditative practice for 11 months continuously will increase the size of your prefrontal cortex. What is the prefrontal cortex? It is the only part of your brain which is actively working right now. जो मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ उसमें जो भी एक्टिव थॉट्स हैं, इन्होंने कुछ क्वेश्चन मुझे बताए थे और कुछ नहीं बताया ना, तो जो नहीं बताए हुए क्वेश्चनों का जवाब दे रहा हूँ वो तो प्री फ्रंटल कॉर्टेक्स से आया है, बाकी तो सबकॉन्शियस प्रोग्रामिंग से ऑलरेडी हो रहा है। तो आपके एग्जाम में जो डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन है वो तो आपको प्री फ्रंटल कॉर्टेक्स से ही आने वाले, पहले पढ़े हुए विचार से नहीं आने वाले। तो मेडिटेट करो और 11 मिनट से शुरू करो और एग्जाम से 11 महीने पहले।
Yeah, that means from today. So I think this gets us to the conclusion of the session. I thank the panelists a lot. I hope everyone found it useful.
Hello. After this session, we are definitely motivated to work on ourselves, at least from today. And thank you so much for inspiring us in all the aspects of wellness, sports, and fitness there. So, let's start. Okay. After this, we'll have another session. We'll be with Miss Urmi Chanda. So, without wasting any time, I would like to introduce. So we'll be having a valedictory session with ma'am, which is based on the theme peace building and reconciliation, ushering in an era of no war. Last session of the day, communities and nations to work together for a better future. When we prioritize reconciliation over revenge, we create the foundation for a world where peace can flourish. So without wasting our time, I would like to introduce to the speaker of the session, Ms. Urmi Chanda, who is a peace builder, a cultural writer, and an interfaith researcher. Ma'am, I would please invite you to the dais. And with this, I would request Ms. Dr. Hiren Gohil to felicitate our guest. Round of applause for her.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear my voice?
Okay. First of all, I apologize because your professors are holding you hostage, many of you. They're not allowing you to leave the room, and that is not a very peaceful thing to do. So, as a as a peace builder, I object to it, but there's a little bit of an ego thing, so I would like some presence. So, thank you for staying. Zabardasti Singh, thank you for staying, and also thanks to this forum for allowing a theme like this. Yeah, peace building may not seem very appealing when you're hungry, you want to go for lunch. but I'm also hungry. But it is an important subject, and I'm grateful that the government and this forum recognizes the need to speak about this. But also a disclaimer, apart from the identities that were presented to you, I have other political identities. My political inclination is left of center. So I am, if I were to be speaking on any other forum, you would hear me speak what you've heard today. But that said, I'm here in my capacity as a peace builder today. So my approach will be different. But, and this is also a learning because as a peace builder, one of my biggest learnings is this better? So one of my biggest learnings, and which sort of flows from the previous session on yoga, is it's peace is an inside-out process. You cannot be preaching peace. You cannot be teaching peace. You cannot try to be bringing peace into the world if there's no peace inside of you. And you're all commerce students. You all deal with finances, tech, listening to all the sessions. You all deal with things that are very, and I'm a thorough humanities person. So mera kaam hi, it's like to deal with, very amorphous things, things that you can't touch, feel, things that have no direct benefit. But when we speak of better futures, better work-life balance, these are also all amorphous things, and it is towards the strive. Bank balance is great, but that's not enough for a good life, right? So I'm going to speak about two things today: reconciliation. And before I get onto reconciliation, I also wanted to point out one more thing as a citizen activist. So since all the sessions in the morning, especially the one on democracy and governance, great session, all goody things, how we should be participative and encourage and say nice things. But one important thing that I thought, if I may, that was missing is dissent. What is wrong with us and self-correct as we grow along. That's the only pathway to achieving peace. And because peace only comes, peace is a multi-pronged thing. Peace is a vast subject, and peace means very. How many are really familiar with the field of peace building? Another Y20 session, delivering a talk on a similar theme, similar numbers. Very few people know. Peace building, kaun si chidiya ka naam hai, Okay, now how many people agree that we have conflict? Is there conflict in our country? Yeah? Sab acha nahi hai na? It's not like a bed of roses, right? We are high on many indexes, but we are very poor on also many other indices. Correct? Can some people name some of the conflicts that our country faces? Some of the most obvious ones that occur to you. Caste is one thing. Manipur is burning right now. It's horrendous what is happening, and it's equally heartbreaking as how little support it's getting from the rest of the country.
The Naxalite movement that is happening.
The Naxalite movement. Okay, could it also be called the indigenous people's movement whose rights may be trampled upon? I'm giving another perspective. Why label? There is always multiple truths.
Everything will be having multiple.
Fair. So, but as a peace builder and as reconciliation, this is also a tool of reconciliation. That there cannot only be one narrative. Correct? Any other conflicts? Anyone else? Sorry? The Khalistanis, the separatist movements. Okay. What else?
Religious conflict, like some brag about their history, how they have ruled.
Yeah.
And how
Gender? Battleground? Yeah? Yeah, falls. And what I'm trying to say is, because like I said, positive conflict, professional relationship, college, home, anywhere, public forum, politics, from the smallest to the largest. When there is more than one person, there will be more than one kind of opinion. And what does that mean? That there will be differences, there will be disagreements. So conflict is something that we must all live with, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, conflict can be seen as an opportunity to improve ourselves, to question our own narratives, our prejudices. Very often we are fed a certain kind of narrative through a certain kind of machinery. but a conflict with someone who may not agree with what you think is right is your chance to also, like you were saying in the morning, to read more about it, to get some curiosity going, instead of forming an opinion, right? But like I said, I'm here in my capacity as a peace builder today, so that's what I will talk about. And I'm shifting my chair a little so I can see this. I need to use this. I'm sorry, students hate PPTs, I know, but it's a memory thing. I don't remember. So, some definitions, I'm going to run through this. I'm not going to bore you with the technical aspects of it. Just so you are familiar with some of these terms. Entire processes that will not happen overnight. This require mechanisms, this require a lot of people on being on board with a vision of what is correct and right. It can start with small group interventions, can be something like a truth commission, or a president asking for a presidential apology to a nation. So there have been instances, the Aborigines, for example, in New Zealand. So the state has officially apologized to the natives for having treated them badly for millennia. So our country also has several kinds of oppressions that I'm hoping all agree about. Yeah, certain communities are oppressed. And when we want to talk about reconciliation, the first thing to do is to acknowledge that there's something wrong, right? You can't correct a wrong if you will not admit that there's something wrong. So that is basically what reconciliation is. It's a sorry, and there are some allied terms that you will see. It's a long-term process, and there are allied terms like truth and justice that go with it. There cannot be one vision. Peace is not a static thing. It's not a aloo that you buy from a market, है ना, कि अभी peace हो गया, लेके आ गए खरीद के, and now आज से my life is peaceful. It's a constant transaction that needs to happen because there are multiple stakeholders, and like I was saying a little earlier, there are multiple truths, and there are different ways of seeking justice and different kinds of needs of justice. What you and I need are very different from someone, say, who studied in a municipal school. Doesn't make them wrong either. So the process of reconciliation is where we all sort of decide to come, walk halfway. नहीं तो नहीं होगा. If one is stuck at a certain standpoint and says नहीं यही है जो है, मानो तो मानो नहीं तो भाड़ में जाओ. That is not reconciliation. Correct? Next. So restorative, transitional justice, these are big fields in themselves. I'm not going to get into it because, like I said, we are hungry. So I'm just getting you all to be familiar as common students, because you are probably will not in your regular field of study and work. When you hear it, you know क्या चल रहा है यहाँ, है ना? Like if there is discussion about transition, first we have to realize that there's something fundamentally wrong with us. We are all wrong, है ना? Is anyone here perfect in this room? Can anyone here claim to be perfect? We are all wrong in one way or another, right? We wrong people, people wrong us. That is human nature. Human beings are complex things, right? Human beings exist in paradoxes. I may be right today, but it is about what peace is. Next. He just mentioned that most of what we know. So he gave this concept. There are two major kinds of peace. There is negative peace and there is positive peace. For most of negative peace, what does it mean? Negative peace means peaceful है. तो अपने घरों में you fight with someone and you're not talking for 5 days. हाँ? मारामारी नहीं हो रही, झगड़े नहीं. Thing in the air. There's tension in the air. Negative peace है. On the face of it, nothing is wrong. But conflict is there. The opposite of which is positive peace. What does that mean? It means there are several conditions in life. When those are met, which are conducive to my growth, safety, and many other indicators. The next slide will tell you of certain indicators of how do you measure positive peace. Next. So these are some of the ways in which you can measure positive peace? How do you say, if you want to claim that my country is peaceful, is it meeting all of these indicators? Just absence of war is not going to be enough. That is there. Huh? For most of us, we live in a very peaceful society. And we don't have to bother about being shot at when we are stepping out on the road. That safety we have. But do we have a well functioning government? Do we have equitable distribution of resources? Do we have free flow of others? Low levels of corruption and a sound business environment. That's probably the one thing that will concern most of you. But is just economic prosperity enough? No. A country will not be peaceful until there is all of these things. Truly, positively peaceful. Hmm? And there are, when it comes to peace building as a field, which I realize not many of you are familiar with, there are these making, peacekeeping, and peace building. Peacemaking happens when there is some kind of external force involved, an intervention involved in stopping a conflict situation. For example, the Russia-Ukraine war, the Manipur conflict. So a state agency or say a United Nations peacekeeping agency has to step in to intervene to stop that. So you're making peace. An external, a third party usually steps in, or the police, danga ho gaya. Police comes. At that moment, the police may have to resort to violent means because, to stop greater violence. But at that moment, to create peace in that situation, they have to have a certain kind of intervention. So that is called peacemaking. The second is peacekeeping. So in areas of which are highly volatile and susceptible to conflict, such take Kashmir for example, we have huge amounts of armed forces there all the time because they believe they're performing a peacekeeping function there. Of course, the citizens of Kashmir will not agree with what our state has to say, but that's the यहाँ का point of view, वहाँ का point of view. There will always be differences. There will be differences in motivations of why a certain action is being performed.